Third gen 4Runners are famous for their reliability, but they're also famous for one type of major failure, the lower ball joint. Now this failure can leave your 4Runner devastated and even totaled. So today we're going to go over everything you can do to prevent this from happening, how to install lower ball joints on this truck, and how you can align your vehicle using nothing more than a rope, a level, and a 2x4. Now first I want to remind you that I'm here to help you. If you have any troubles doing this on your vehicle, or you have any questions, feel free to email me at justcallmeeddie1@gmail.com and I'll help you out with anything I can. So the biggest question I get is, how do I prevent this from happening to my old Toyota? Well, the thing you have to do is replace your ball joints when they're needed. And you could check them by putting a pry bar underneath the tire and prying up on it when it's off the ground. And if it has any movement at all, then you need a new ball joint. But you should not wait until your ball joint goes bad until you replace it. If you have a 20-plus-year-old vehicle and you think that ball joint has never been changed, odds are it hasn't, and you should change it right away, because you do not want to end up like this, which could be devastating to your vehicle and total it out. Now the next biggest question I get is, what ball joints do we buy when we want to replace them? And my answer is always OEM ball joints. There are many different brands out there and some claim to be better than others, but nothing is as good as OEM. And you can buy OEM parts from Toyota themselves, or you can go to the OEM brand, which is 555 Sankei, and you can buy these from various retailers online for a reasonable cost. If you like mods and upgrades like I do, you can also go for a Uniball kit from SRQ Fabrications and other fabricators that has a design where it's completely metal and there's no boot on it. I did not opt for this kit because it is very hard to take care of in maintenance. You have to grease it often, and if you don't, it'll start to squeak and it can go bad. That being said, it is very durable, and if you're not going with the OEM brand and you want to upgrade and you live in the South or not in the Rust Belt, it's probably a good option to go with one of these. Now they are very expensive, which is why I've decided to go with the 555 Sankei, and I found these online for a reasonable price. And I also bought inner and outer tire rods as well, and we'll be replacing those as well in this video. I always recommend replacing those with the lower ball joints because they tie in to the lower ball joints and you're going to have to take them off anyway. Now here we are taking the outer tire rod loose from the inner. Alright, this is the important part. You're going to count the threads coming out, and hopefully we'll have the same amount of threads going back in, right? 1, 2, 3... 25, 26. So we count the threads to help keep the tires aligned. The front end alignment is adjusted by screwing the outer tire rods in and out. Counting the threads allows us to keep the front end at least close to where it was previously aligned. You will see that this method is not perfect, but it helps to get it close to alignment. That way you do not have to adjust those inner and outer tire rods so much when you get it all back together. Now as you can see, I'm not using an inner tire rod tool to tighten down these tire rods. That's because I do not have one, and you can usually rent one from O'Reilly's when you buy these parts. But if you're buying the OEM parts, you can't buy them from O'Reilly's. So you can't rent the tool when you're not buying them from O'Reilly's. So it's a tough decision to make, but I ended up just using that snap-on tool to get them on and off, and it worked pretty well, and I got them pretty tight. So now we're counting the threads back on, and we had 26 threads come off, so we're counting 26 spins back onto the inner tire rod, and hopefully this will get us close to our alignment. Now we got to start with the lower ball joint, and there's a cotter pin that goes through there, but I just pulled it out. And we get the nut loose, and then I'm using an air hammer with a pickle fork to get the ball joint broken loose before I take the bolts loose. Now this makes it a whole lot easier, so you do not have to press in and out the ball joint. The bolt-on ball joints are my favorite, and it's so easy to install this thing. You just break the nut loose, break the ball joint loose, and now you could take the ball joint right out and replace it with the brand new one. Very easy to install. The hardest part is getting the knuckle lifted off so you can get the ball joint out of there. They're still pretty stiff, so I probably still had some life left in them, but we're going to go ahead and replace them. Good to know though. Plus I broke the boot just now, so. Now putting the new one on is just as easy as taking the old one off, maybe even easier. The hardest part is lining up these bolts on the bolt holes on the knuckle. And that can get pretty aggravating, but as soon as you get them lined up, you can go ahead and put them down with the impact, and then hit them with the air impact to make sure they're nice and tight. As with anything I replace on cars, I always replace them in pairs. I do not do one thing to the one side that I don't do to the other. So we're working on the passenger side now, and I decided to take the lower ball joint loose first on this side just to see if it was easier to do it that way. And it did seem to go a little quicker, and I'm not sure if that's just because I already knew the process of what I was doing or if I took the lower ball joint loose first. They make a tool to get these off, but I didn't buy these parts from O'Reilly's and I don't have the tools, so I use my snap-on, whatever this thing's called, and it usually works fairly well. Guys. Now we're going to use the same thread counting technique that we used on the driver's side on this side, and we're going to hope it keeps our alignment as close as possible. And to check that, we're going to use another alignment technique that I've seen online, which we're going to use 2 angle iron bars and a pair of tape measures. And we're going to do this by bolting the bars to the tires using the lug nuts, and then we're going to use the tape measures on the front and back to see how far the alignment is off. All right, we got it, I mean, as close as I think I'm gonna get it. It looks pretty straight here. I mean, that looks pretty straight to me. We line it up with everything else. This looks pretty straight too. And we were at 62 and a quarter and 62 and a quarter. Now, I found it hard with this method to keep the steering wheel straight while trying to align the vehicle. Every time you went to try to push the tires one way or the other, the steering wheel would move, which made it very difficult to set the toe and keep the steering wheel straight while you were driving straight. So to check this, all you can do is drive it down the road and see how straight the steering wheel is. Here's the alignment check. We're going to see where the steering wheel's at, driving straight, and it's a little off to the left. But it's not that bad, honestly. I mean, for a homemade poor man's alignment, I feel pretty proud of myself. I got it that close. So a couple weeks went by, and I just drove the car like that with the toe out of alignment. It wears down your tires, but a couple weeks is not going to hurt anything of daily driving. Now, during those weeks, I actually got the front off-road bumper put on this vehicle. So you're going to see a little sneak preview here of what the off-road bumper looks like, and I'm going to show you how to put this thing together in my next video. But here we're going to be using a different alignment technique. We're actually going to be using wheel dollies. We're going to set the front end down on wheel dollies, and we're going to be using a string that goes all the way around the back tires to the front of the vehicle to set the alignment in the toe. And then we're also going to be using a level and a 2x4 to set the camber on this thing, which has been V'd in for several years now. Alright, welcome to another episode of Poor Man's Alignment here, and today we're using strings to try to set the toe, and we're using a level, a 2x4, and some wheel dollies to try to set the camber. Now, as you can see, maybe you can, maybe you can't, the string is going to align the tires all straight. And you can see right here on my front tire, I got to come over that way just a tad. So, and over here on the other tire, I mean, I did pretty good with the tape measure, I believe, because you can see that it's got to come that way just a tad. And when we're driving our steering wheel, it's over this way. So if we knock everything that way, it should bring the steering wheel back straight. And that's the hope. Now, this poor man's alignment procedure takes a lot of patience, and it's a lot of getting down on the ground and getting back up and checking your results. Now, first you want to set the camber on both tires, and you do that by adjusting the lower control arm bolts in or out. And you're going to have to get up and check the level and make sure they're level before you adjust the toe. Once you got the camber level, you can adjust the toe in or out to get the tires lined up with the strings. And don't forget to check and make sure your steering wheel is staying straight throughout this whole process. All right, so we figured it out. I didn't have the steering wheel set, so when I was turning it, it was actually turning the steering wheel and not the wheels. That's the important part of alignment plates that pivot on the ground. These work pretty well, but they're still not exactly, perfect. There's a lot of weight on them. They're not easy to move, and the tire rods really don't push them. It really pushes the steering wheel back and forth. So you have to get up and keep resetting the steering wheel, making sure it's straight, and then straighten your wheels back out. I think I got it as close as I can get it without taking it to an alignment shop. I mean, we're touching the rope on both sides here. Again, it's not perfect, but that camber that's close enough for my eyes. Now let me be clear, there is no replacement for an alignment shop that has the proper equipment and knows what they're doing. Now that being said, I think the string method worked great for setting my toe, but the level in the camber didn't work as well. I couldn't get it perfect, and I'm not sure if my local alignment shops could have done any better. The biggest problem I had with setting the camber was my 20-plus-year-old lower control arms. They're the only thing I have not replaced on this 4Runner suspension, and probably need to be along with the lower control arm bolts to get the camber perfect. It won't hurt anything but the tires to drive it like it is for now, so I'm not worried about it. But you should definitely comment below and tell me how much of an idiot I am, and let me know how much I should be worried about it. And you should also subscribe to this channel so you do not miss any more of my 4Runner project videos or any of my other videos where I give out vehicle information for free. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook where I post weekly content about the day-to-day things that I do and give out free stuff from time to time. And if you do so happen to just want to pay me for whatever reason, I am now on Patreon for the low cost of a gallon of gas per month. Thanks for watching, and whatever you do, however you do it, make sure you work hard, make sure you play hard, and most importantly, make sure you stay dirty. You can just call me Eddie.